And now, the survival show that once survived, 2016. In this episode, we sit down together to answer listener questions and some 2017 predictions. Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 200. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Before we get into your listener questions, I've got a couple things I wanted to say to y'all. First, I am a bit under the weather. Seems my body is trying to fight whatever bug I've got by jettisoning everything it can from every port that it can with as much force as it can. Exciting stuff! So, while this is a special episode, 200 is going to be shorter than I really wanted it to be, and will probably lack some of the timing and spontaneity. Hopefully it should have been otherwise. Anyway, second, I sent out an email to many of y'all asking to share what the show has meant to you. 200 episodes is a huge milestone in podcasting. Most shows don't survive past, I think it's about 6 episodes, so it's kind of a big deal. And in that, I'd like to share with y'all what it's meant to me. Simply put, the last, say, 6.25 years have been an absolute blast. The show, for those of you who are new here or have never heard the story, I'll make it short, but the show started with just 2 crazy guys driving to and from the shooting range. This shooting range was about 45 minutes away. And as you can guess, the 2 guys in the car were myself and my original co-host, Jonathan. And every week, we would go to the shooting range. I think it was usually every Saturday. It's a lot of time to sit in a car. And so we would have all kinds of crazy conversations about girls, guns, preparedness, politics, and all kinds of other things. And at some point we thought, these conversations are really entertaining. And while we did acknowledge the fact that we were entertaining ourselves, others may not find us as entertaining. Thought, well, let's put it out there. Let's see what people would take away from what we thought was going to be a very different kind of survival show with a very different tone. And so ITRH was born. And we thought, maybe we'd get 10 episodes in, we'd have some laughs, we'd get to say we did this, and 10 people would listen, and that'd be that. But as we kept going, more and more people kept subscribing to the show, and the listener numbers kept growing, and we started making new friends through the show, and having all kinds of really cool conversations and meeting all kinds of cool people in the survival and preparedness world, and it just kept going. And even though my co-hosts, Jonathan and Jason, weren't able to stick around or be around as much in recent times as they had originally been, I know that they are still part of the show and often talk about how much they miss being on the show and how much they miss the listeners. It's crazy to think that today ITRH is now downloaded about 50,000 times a month. So I guess there's a few people that really like the show, and I guess I should keep doing it. 200 episodes is actually a lot of work, and I think what y'all end up hearing is usually 45 minutes to an hour's worth of content, but there's all the back stuff that has to happen. We actually do put a lot of effort into editing and producing the show, chasing around guests, and doing all that other stuff. So 200 episodes actually equates to about 2,000 hours of recording and editing and sitting here and going, well, was that funny or was that boring? And should that go or should that stay? Or did that guest really mean to say that or not? That also probably doesn't count the other 1,000 hours of just doing stuff like keeping the website running and all the other machinery that goes into making the show happen. But when ITRH receives an email from someone sharing an impact the show has had, a new Armada member signs up and says they want to make sure that they can do everything they can to make sure help keep the show stay around. Or when your wedding photographer says, "Oh shit, you're those guys," My buddy's been trying to get me to listen to y'all's show for forever. It's kind of crazy, kind of wild, and a lot of fun, and it makes it all worthwhile. So thanks to all of you for listening, and a big thanks to all of you who've done things big and small to support the show and, keep this crazy boat, going. And with that, let's get into, let's start with some quick predictions. And I'm not going to go too deep into this for reasons I've already kind of said. The Hearing Protection Act. I've kind of waffled on this over the last few days as I've been thinking about this. I think it will pass. And I think a few things are going to happen. And to back up for a minute, for those of you who are not familiar with the Hearing Protection Act, and I'm not going to bore you with all the numbers and everything else, but the proposal is to essentially remove silencers, suppressors, cans, as some of us call them, from the NFA. And the real benefit there is that basically you'll be able to go into any sort of gun store and just be able to buy one. I haven't gone super deep into this. I've gotten the highlights. I haven't had the time to really delve into this, but essentially it gets away with it removes the $200 tax stamp and the 6 to 8 month, 9 months, and some bad times waiting period takes to be able to buy a suppressor. And generally that really sucks. If you've never bought one before, they're a lot of fun and there are huge advantages to them, which we've beaten that horse at length in other episodes. But I think it is ridiculous that that suppressors were ever on that. It is nonsense, and well, it's basically just it's bullshit. It's people who, like a lot of things with guns, it's people in legislature making laws about things they don't understand and don't get, and well, it's scary, so you shouldn't be able to have it, or you shouldn't be able to have it without going through an obscene amount of hoops. If it passes, I am going to kind of do a weird mixed little dance, which is, on one hand, I'll be really glad that it passes and there's not this $200 plus 6 months waiting barrier. Actually, I think it's probably more down to 3 right now. I'll be glad that that's not there anymore. I think it'll be great for the shooting sports. So the other side is I'll be really irritated that I have spent $200 a couple of times. But, it is what it is. It'll be nice. I do think it is going to pass. I think there's enough support. And I think in general, there's been enough of a really great marketing and education campaign by a lot of companies, probably most notably Silencer Co., to really try to make it more accessible to people. National reciprocity. I do not see this passing. I believe that there is entirely too much support against some sort of national reciprocity for concealed carry. I do not agree with that. I think there should be national reciprocity. I think if you want to carry, you should be able to carry. I mean, there's a lot of states I do not agree with their gun laws, but there's a lot of laws, period, that I don't agree with. So that's an aside. Anyway, I don't see there being enough support for that and too much pushback from too many states that are really just very anti-gun. My next prediction will be for gun manufacturers. I think you're going to see some gun manufacturers really struggle in 2017. I think there's going to be a big slowdown. There's no real pressure from political bodies that I can see at this time. But, something could happen and there could be some sort of tragedy and people could switch positions that they've taken. But for right now, I just don't see any external pressures. One of the big jokes of President Obama's presidency was that he was the best gun salesman that ever lived. And I think in a lot of ways that is very true. And I just don't see that there being any other issues coming up. So I think that is going to cause a couple of things: a glut in the market, and that glut in turn, a lot of manufacturers have spun up their facilities and made a lot of big investments in being able to churn out more firearms, and those investments I'm going to guess a lot of those investments have not paid off yet. So they're going to be stuck with a lot of equipment and a lot of labor and a lot of inventory that they start to have a hard time moving. So I think you're gonna hear some real sad stories about some manufacturers, and maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it kind of clears out some of the nonsense that's in the industry. Hopefully, that the competition heats up a bit, and maybe companies that have not been doing a great job of serving their customers do a better job of serving their customers. We'll see. I think we'll also see, in that same vein, we'll see an easing of ammo availability and pricing. Pricing and availability has already gotten pretty good over the last probably year or two. We still have this weird magical disappearance of 22 that honestly I don't even want to make a prediction about 22 ammo anymore. I keep thinking it's going to come back, like just any minute now it's going to come back. And while there is more of it, like it certainly is coming around, you're still not seeing the days, or at least I'm still not seeing the days where buying a case of 22 ammo was no big deal. And way back when we started this show, Jonathan and I used to buy, and Jason McConnell too, used to buy 22 ammo by the case. Like it was nothing. Like that was a monthly expense that you just had. And I think we paid about, I don't know, 180 to 200 bucks a case for 5,000 rounds of 22. And yeah, I mean, and going to the gun range and blowing a 500 round brick of 22 ammo is no big deal. Whereas now it's like, and actually the last time I saw Jonathan, we were talking about going shooting. We were joking around. We did take our 22 and we were joking around about, I'm just going to take a box of 50 or maybe 2 boxes of 50 because I don't want to be tempted to burn off this whole brick because I still don't know when the stupid stuff is going to come back. Maybe somebody has a good answer for why 22 ammo has still not really made the comeback that it should. I hear a lot of the same arguments that it's, all these people with these 22 caliber AR uppers and it's all these new shooters and all this other stuff. I'm just not buying that. I really think it's probably something else. I think manufacturers were probably so focused getting caught up with all the other ammo and that there's such a higher profit margin in centerfire ammo as opposed to rimfire ammo, especially 22, that I just think in a lot of ways it hasn't been worth it for them to really gear up. I'm pulling that out of my butt. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying that's my opinion. I don't think it's necessarily that there's all these new shooters and all this other stuff. I don't know, but I hope to see it come back. I don't know that it is, or if it is, and I'm not going to make 22 caliber predictions this year. My next prediction, getting out of the 22 or getting out of the gun realm, really for the most part, and I'm going to probably piss off both sides of the political aisle on this. No matter what your leaning is, I'm probably going to make you mad. I think you're going to see a lot more left-leaning preppers come into the community. And I think a lot of them are promptly going to get their feelings hurt when they come in and kind of butt heads with the classically liberal, also known as libertarian group and the conservative majorities that are in the community. There's a mostly BS article floating around about left-leaning people, like liberals, buying guns all of a sudden. And I posted up there because I thought it was funny and I thought there were some interesting takeaways from the article. But, oh, God, people get so butthurt about such stupid stuff. It is amazing on stuff that's kind of obvious. Like, yeah, all right, this is funny because if it were true, like, come on, like, really, you don't have the uber conservatives typically are not the ones coming out saying, we need to get rid of all these guns. So there's an irony in it, and that's funny, but people still get their feelings hurt. Now, I think that gun article was mostly BS, but I think liberals, more and more liberals, an influx coming into the community more so than normal. I think that there is some validity to that. I've heard from a number of people that I've talked to recently and a number of friends that all of a sudden are concerned with things. And this is not the first time I've seen this happen. And I think really what they're going to be concerned with is Trump starting World War III. That is going to be their issue. And I mean, I've seen this when George Bush was in office for what's probably going to be the same reason. I mean, at that time, I was hanging out with my friend and former boss, Neil Strauss, who was pretty far left leaning. That kind of stuff is what spawned the entire journey that he went on to into becoming a survivalist and a prepper, and then led to him writing the book Emergency that he's well known for, at least in this community. Obviously, for those of you who know who I'm talking about, he has a lot of other books. It was the same things. It was someone who is politically opposed, is diametrically opposed politically, is now in power. They have all these new powers because guess what? Presidential power keeps just growing. So that's kind of scary to everybody when you're on the opposite end of it. Now I'm worried about my privacy. I'm worried about my rights and all these other things. And, goose chase ensues. I don't think we're going to see a flood of this. Like I said, I just think it's going to be an uptick. And I think the big ticket reason is going to be nuclear war. This year, we're going to hear and see a lot of articles about nuclear war, and that's going to be the thing everybody is worried about, at least from Trump. And I think that is what that is. I don't put a lot of stock into it, and I'm not that concerned with it. And it's kind of one of those things that nuclear war is one of those big prepper things that there's the problem of, could you actually survive it? And would you want to survive it? I don't know. I think that's definitely on the far end of the disaster probability matrix of what you should prepare for and what you could survive through. Anyway, I think Trump supporters will be disappointed. I think he's going to soften almost every single one of his positions that he took, and he'll soften them in a big way. I don't think you're going to get the president you think you got. And this applies to both sides. I do not think you're going to get the president you thought you got. A big part of this is Donald Trump is a showman and understands showmanship very well and is going to be very much about saying what needs to be said and said in a very particular way that thrills his supporters and terrifies his detractors to keep everyone talking about Donald Trump. You can tell this from who some of his friends are. I think it's WWF, the owner of the WWF is one of his good friends, and he has credited him, I can't think of his name, with a lot of his understanding of PR. And, PR is all about getting attention. And one of the things that Donald Trump has been exceptional about has been keeping his name in the news. This is not a prediction, really. This is straight from the horse's mouth, is that Obama has said that he will not sit on the sidelines and be quiet. That is not a direct quote, but it's close enough. And I think it is extremely tacky and extremely telling of his personality that he is going to break with tradition. I don't think necessarily that past presidents shouldn't be allowed to have an opinion about things. I just don't think that they necessarily should voice them. They should understand, I can't even imagine the stress, but I can imagine it's pretty damn great. And the last thing you need is an armchair warrior who is no longer in the position and doesn't have all the facts that you have as president, sling mud, nonsense, and bullshit. It's like, you've had your time, you've had your say, retire with grace, like the presidents before you. I don't think we're going to see that. And I think what really this is going to mean is a regular back and forth in the media between Trump and Obama. And I think it's going to look not as nasty, but I think it's going to look, in some respects, to what we saw between Rosie O'Donnell and Trump, which was very nasty and quite entertaining, even for somebody like me who can't stand that kind of stuff. It was pretty damn funny. I think the left will be in a constant rampage going on and on about whether or not what Trump is doing is constitutional or not. And it's going to be really hypocritical, since most of the things they're going to be complaining about is things that they did not complain about and condoned while President Obama was doing them through presidential memorandum. I predict I will be shaking my head, since I think all of this is just theater, poppycock, and of course, nonsense. And that's that. So let's get into your listener questions. I'm not going to be able to get through all of them. There is one in particular. It is a gun thing. It's a response to something I said, and somebody was very upset about it. And when I am feeling better and not going to give an answer that is going to make me come off as a real asshole, I will answer that one. So you, who know who you are cringeworthy yourself, will get it next time when I'm not going to be a jerk. So first one from Mike. How about a show on solar or wind? Mike, I have tried to do a show on solar and wind. I've had extensive conversations with friends, buddies, pals, and random people that I've met that seem to know about things. It is very complicated. It is hard to find someone to talk about them who I feel has actually two brain cells to rub together about them. In the actual people in the industry that I've spoken to, the only people I've been able to speak to about it, to try to have them on, have just been raging idiots. We had an interview lined up with someone, and the guy was such a moron and pissed me off so much. I told him to take a long walk off short pier, and we scrapped that episode that week, and we went on to something else. I have yet to be able to find somebody else who can speak about solar and wind at length and make it interesting and make a good case for it. They're both still very interesting options, but they are expensive and very complicated options. And even people who I think are very intelligent have told me is complicated and a pain in the ass. So, but anyway, Mike, I am still looking for somebody and would still love to interview someone and at least discuss more about solar and wind than we have. I know we've talked about it a little bit with Gary, but like a whole show on it would be great. Like I said, I still got to find somebody. Let's see. I'm going to mispronounce your name, madam. It's Donna or Dana? I'm not sure, and I'm really sorry. But anyway, your question is, I wanted to first tell you guys that I love your podcast. I own chickens and heard the interview with Aaron on Urban Chicken Podcast. And well, down the rabbit hole I went. As a quick side note, Jen, if you are listening, thank you again. I hope you're doing well. We haven't talked in a while, and I keep meaning to reach out to you. Jennifer is the host of the Urban Chicken Podcast. Back to Dana's question and answer. I wanted to ask if you have any recommended literature on the basics of preparedness, or perhaps areas that you think are most important. Aside from my stockpile as a couponer, I don't stockpile much. I also don't own any tools, weapons, or camping gear. I'm also trying to pique my husband's interest. Any suggestions? Thanks a billion. Gosh, where to start with this? Okay, so my first suggestion for your husband, as far as piquing his interest, some people are just not going to be interested in that. And I think that's the first thing you have to sort of accept, is that their survival and preparedness can be an emotional thing for some people. And for that reason, they can be averse to it. There's also media influence that says it's weird and crazy. I obviously don't think you're weird or crazy for doing it. You could be weird and crazy for totally other reasons, but I don't think it's for survival and preparedness. As far as getting your husband's interest, I think that is an important thing to first think, is you may not be able to. It just is what it is. I mean, this isn't just prep. I mean, there's things my wife is interested in that I can't stand, and there's things I'm interested in. A lot of things I'm interested in my wife can't stand. That's just the nature of having a spouse or significant other or anything, even a best friend. Sometimes you're not always interested in the same things. Anyway, going on for too long. Lots of cold and flu medicine kids here. Here, kids. So anyway, point being, what you can do is find something that you think is entertaining. That could be a podcast episode, and it's not just a ploy for getting another listener for In the Rabbit Hole. It could be any show. I mean, anywhere that you think is good, or that you thought made a good case that your husband might find interesting, and recommend it to him. Say, here, have a listen. I just turned on my business partner to a podcast, and it wasn't to pique his interest, but it was simply like the normal way people share things. I said, here, dude, this is something that I think you'll find really interesting, and there's a lot of really cool takeaways from it, and he's now addicted to that podcast. So that's one option. Another option is to share interesting articles or any other kind of interesting information. As far as basics of preparedness, I cannot think of necessarily a perfect book or anything. I mean, that becomes the problem with the word perfect anyway. I would say start with the basics. There is, if you sign up for the In the Rabbit Hole mailing list, which if you go to any page on the site or post on the site or anything like that, you get a pop-up box. If you sign up for it, I made a 7-part video series that also has some bonuses that goes along with it. And each one of them is about 5 minutes long, and it'll walk you through the basics. It's really the basic stuff. And I think somebody, and I can't remember which guest it was, but basically he said, if preparedness is exciting to you, you're probably doing it wrong, or you're playing with guns too much, because most of prep is really kind of boring. It's, just, figuring out how much food do we need to have on hand? How much water do we need to have on hand? What do we do about purifying water? And going and taking first aid classes, which some people find very entertaining, other people find boring. But those are the areas that you really need to focus on. Focus on your basic needs as a human being. Food, water, shelter, security, things like that. And then move on from there. You don't need piles of camping gear. You don't need piles of weapons, tools, all these things. They're only useful if you know how to use them. And even having piles of them, I don't know, it doesn't meet every single scenario. I would start off with the basics and start off from, worrying about the things that are most likely to happen in your life and then moving up the kind of chain of crazy from there. That would be my suggestion. I hope that was helpful to you. Again, if you want, it's a free resource. I spent a lot of time and energy making those videos, and I thought they had a lot of good information in them. Your mileage may vary, but they're free and they're out there. I would suggest you go check them out. And if you already on the mailing list and you didn't get them, let me know. Email me back, Dana, and I will send them to you. Let's see here. So the next one is from John. Most excellent work. My question: is it possible to make insulin, or are all the type 1 diabetics screwed if shit hits the fan? Thank you for all the hard work and keep us dumbasses in better shape. I don't know why you're calling yourself a dumbass, John. I bother my email man every day for news from you. Dude, it's awesome. I don't email that much, so it's okay. Leave that email man alone. But in all seriousness, John, yes, there is a way to make insulin, and you're going to need a shitload of sheep. It's actually, I did look into it, and I think I only looked into it because of 1 second after. Not that I'm not diabetic, and no one in my immediate care circle of responsibility necessarily that I know of is diabetic, so I didn't go too deep into it. I do know, and I did look up the process. It is a very complicated process, and like I said, and I'm not joking about the sheep. It takes a shitload of sheep to make a little bit of insulin. The bad news is, yeah, type 1 diabetics, screwed. I did hear something recently that they may have invented or come out with. You may be able to get it now, that there is room temperature stable insulin that doesn't spoil. I don't know if that was bullshit or not. It's not. I don't know. But I thought I remember reading something about that in the last year. So you may look into that. If shelf stable insulin was a real thing, then you could probably store it up for a while. But as far as a long-term grid down situation, no, I'm sorry. I don't have good news for you there. Next one. This is from John. When I started to seek out information on prepping, survival, guns, etc., I naturally went to pods. I listened to many, but they just weren't what I was looking for. Then I found ITRH. ITRH just fit the mindset I had and the perspective I was looking for. You pointed me in the right direction to start my journey. I wasn't even a gun owner when I first listened. So I've come a long way to make sure my family has a better chance of surviving anything that comes our way. Love your stuff. What you do, John. John, dude, super appreciate the great words. It really does mean a lot to hear that the show has had an impact on someone's life, and that it has had of course, a hopefully beneficial impact on your life. And I assume you are now a gun owner from the way you wrote that. Awesome. Next one is from Mark, my man, your ammo making man, Mark, who is a good friend of the show, has been on the show. He did the ammo reloading show and has become a good friend in just the real world. Mark wrote in, I'm pretty sure I listened to ITRH within the first month it went live. It's kind of like it's fermented into something to have fun and get drunk on without the headaches and cramps the next day. Regarding the question, ITRH has provided a bit of confirmation on what I'm doing is not lunacy. I'm probably lesser hell-bent for prep than most, but feel affirmed that I'm probably in a better position than most. It's also allowed the missus to dabble a bit into the lifestyle, which is a major bonus. As a side note here, I think that's a funny thing. The more I get out into the world and the more preppers I meet, the more I realize, and the more my original suspicion was confirmed, that most people in the community, most preppers, most survivalists that you'll ever meet are totally down-to-earth people looking to survive basic stuff. By and large, they're not the post-apocalyptic nuclear zombie war minded folks. I think all of us, and I'm including myself in this, I think most of us are concerned with one or maybe a few of these like super crazy world-ending events, and you know, love the fiction around them and stuff. But by and large, most of us are just prepping for simple things, and because I haven't met many people yet who have the kind of funds to build the bunkers and do the, you know, Boston Brahmin book series level of insanity. And while I think also most of us would enjoy doing that kind of thing, I think it's flat. Just it's not within the realm of reason for most of us. And honestly, I think even if I had that kind of money, I don't know that I would. I might just for laughs, but I don't think I'd do it. I think I'd spend that money in other ways. I think that's a misconception, and a lot of people really think that they're going to go meet other preppers, and these other preppers are going to be total lunatics. And I've met one or two total lunatics, but they're still pretty cool people, and they're very, very few and far between. I can think of maybe one. Anyway, back to Mark's thing. My show question would be, what is your most cringe-worthy prep type acquisition? No shame in this. We've all been there, drunk at 3 a.m., watching the infomercials, saying to yourself, that gizmo is fantabulous, and I can get 2 of them with free shipping. Yeah, this is a difficult one. There's a few things. One was the 2 cases of hydrogen peroxide that I used to have. That's not a huge one, but it was still as my buddy Ron Davis, who's been on the show a few times and did all the medical shows that we've had way back when. He informed me, since he was a paramedic, it informed me that hydrogen peroxide was only good for getting blood out of clothing and a few other random things, but it was not really ideal for cleaning wounds. So that was something where there was like 2 cases of hydrogen peroxide on sale, and I was like, I've got to have me some hydrogen peroxide, because growing up in the 70s and 80s, that's, you know, if it didn't boil, bubble, and foam, it wasn't, you know, actually cleaning your wounds and stuff. The next one would be probably the case of fishing yo-yos that I bought. That's probably pretty cringeworthy. Not so much the individual fishing yo-yo, but the entire case of them. They're pretty cool little doodads. I've yet to actually get a chance to try them out. They are sitting in a part of my prepper shit shelf that is you should get around to opening these and trying them out one day. They are kind of a neat little gadget. They are basically a spool with a spring in it, and around the spool is a pretty hefty test weight fishing line, and you hook one end of it to a tree or a limb hanging over water, and then you bait a hook on the end of this line and throw it in the water, and in theory, a fish bites it and starts trying to swim off, and that triggers the spring to go into action and yanks the fish up out of the water, or at least up to the surface or something. It's pretty fabulous. There was free shipping, as a matter of fact, and I have a shitload of them now. I'll have to give you one next time I see you. The next cringeworthy, I have a snowsuit, but like full on head to toe, like that kind of jumpsuit snowsuit. I don't know why the hell I have this thing. At some point, I don't know, there was that one movie about the world freezing over. There was like a couple of them. Maybe I watched them back to back and thought, in case of a snowstorm, here in Houston, I need to survive. So I'm going to need a snowsuit. So I think, it's a tough toss up between the snowsuit and the fishing yo-yos. Which one was worse? I don't know, Mark, you let me know. And the rest of y'all, let me know in the comment section or on the Facebook post for this. Anyway, let's see. Moving on here to, do not have a name for this person here. The first thought that occurred to me in response to your question, what has ITRH meant to me? It has been a fantastic aggregator of a wide range of information in one place. You are exploring and elucidating upon subjects as well as illuminating aspects of those subjects others may miss. Well written. I hope that made sense. Yeah, sure, why not? Thanks for all the great episodes and useful information, Aaron. Oh, and happy belated Christmas and Happy New Year to you. Cheers. Thank you. And, happy Hanukkah and New Year's to you too. Ben wrote in and said, thank you much for putting together the podcast. I especially love when you're able to strong arm Jason and Jonathan back onto the show. The chemistry is what you only get with old friends. And we are, I will tell you now, we are old friends. Actually, Jason and I have been friends for over 20 years now. Yes, and Jonathan and I, well, we aged ourselves about 20 years with the amount of drinking and carousing and late nights we spent. Story for another day. What has ITRH meant to me? It's been a lifeline. I live in California in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's a little hard to find like-minded people who prioritize preparedness. I use the podcast to learn, especially the broad-based basics, but very much enjoy the depth you go into in the topics. Lots of times, things you introduce are jumping off points into further research. I wear my red ITRH rabbit hat with pride. I'm sure people think it's for a video game company or something. Yeah, this probably is. I'm a gun-toting accountant from the bluest part of a blue state, but I feel like we could sit down for a beer and have some great discussions. Thanks for doing what you do. And Ben, I bet we could sit down and have a beer and talk about our video game hats. It'd be pretty cool, man. In all seriousness, thank you, Ben, and thank you to everyone else for what you wrote in this time. I really appreciate the good words, and even though they were solicited, and the questions. And of course, you can send me your questions at questions@intherabbithole.com, and once a month, I will put them in a show and answer them to the best of my ability, or to the worst of my ability, depending on the day and how sick I am and how much cough syrup and other things I have ingested before recording an episode. Show notes, links, and resources from this episode can be found at intherabbithole.com/E200. Support the show and receive members-only benefits. Visit ITRH.net today. ITRH is kept on the air almost entirely from the support of listeners just like you. Again, visit ITRH, that's ITRH.net, to become a part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. Finally, a Happy New Year to all of you. May 2017 bring you much in the way of staying safe and sound. And with that, we wrap up episode number 200 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.